It is my pleasure to now welcome to The Truth Adam Hardage. He is a retired intelligence officer. This guy has packed a lot into his young years. He has served or worked in 4 wars, 6 deployments, and has worked in 40 countries. Is that right, Adam?
Yes, sir.
Well, welcome to The Truth. So, Adam, I need some rehabilitation. I am as discouraged and concerned about the country that we live in as I have ever been. In fact, I have always celebrated living in America. I have thought that it was the most wonderful country on earth and that it would only continue to get better because we were doing all the right things. We were taking care of people who couldn't take care of themselves. We were making college education available to anyone who wanted it. And you could go out and earn $1 million. All you had to do was come up with a decent idea and mix that with a lot of hard work, and you could become a millionaire. I mean, what was there not to like? What is going on? What is your assessment?
Yeah, those were good times. I was actually just lamenting this last night with my wife, and saying, boy, I long for the 90s when the biggest scandal in the world was the sitting president of the Oval Office receiving some extracurricular activity support from one of his staff.
I know where you're going.
Those days. I really do. I miss those days. And there seems to be a real sort of nefarious turn that things started to take post 9/11. So, and I think, frankly, what we're seeing today is all part of the same kind of cancerous growth. You had this neocon society. I mean, in fact, I was part of it. I was a diehard military guy, believed 100% in God and country and freedom and apple pie and all that stuff. And I mean, I've taken the oath of office many times, and I went away for a long time. And all the operators and stuff like myself, we went away, we went to war, we did our part, and we come home, and then we finally understand why all the veterans that hang out at the VFW are grumpy all the time. And it's because they've all been lied to, just like we were lied to, just like every generation that goes to war since World War II has been lied to. And it seems that ever since we went to this Bretton Woods, post-World War II, alliance world, Cold War, fiat-backed currency, central bank system, it seems like ever since then, we have had a policy in place of endless wars, forever wars, and bolstering the defense military industrial complex, of which I was a part for many years. And I mean, I see it very clearly, and I've seen it in environments around the world. So I think that's where we are. But let me just tell you one hopeful thing that your audience, I think, needs to hear, and that is all the nefarious stuff that is going on. And I do think that we're in a spiritual war, straight up tyranny versus freedom, good versus evil. This is, angels and demons fighting out in the open type thing. So if you're not a religious person, I would get a little bit spiritual and get to know God a little bit and get your family business in order, because I do think it's going to be a rocky and turbulent time. But in the end, God wins, and God does smile upon them. We are the last light on the hill, the shining beacon where truth and liberty will prevail. And guys like yourself and myself will not let that light go out. So don't worry about that light being extinguished, because it ain't going to happen.
Well, I have lived 71 years, and I have observed that good triumphs over evil. Right now, it just looks like the odds are stacked against us, but I certainly embrace everything that you just said, and I do personally pray every day, multiple times a day, and the prayers always include safety for the United States. So let's back up just a little bit and talk about your role in. Were you a spook? Is that a fair conclusion to draw? And for whom? Yeah. Whose payroll were you on?
So I was a spook of spooks. I was from the agency that we don't discuss. I started out prior in the defense world, though, as a defense intelligence agency officer. And so I spent about, I think, 8 years there before going over to the other side. But in that role, I was what they call a farm-trained field tradecraft officer or operations officer. So a classic spy. It's not even really a spy. It's spy handler. It's spy master kind of thing. But it was a fascinating career. I loved it. I absolutely loved the mission sets, the kind of work we got to do, and I really do feel like The people who are out there still jobbing at the pointy end are, their hearts are in the right place. They take that oath seriously, and they risk life and limb to do the job. A lot of times that is not appreciated by perma-state bureaucrats. It's not appreciated by the chain of command or higher ups, but the guys and gals that are on the front line every day get it done, and more because of sense of duty than trying to impress their boss.
So where were you stationed? Where did you conduct the majority of your espionage?
Okay. Well, I was stationed in quite a few places, but I'm not going to tell you the answer to that last part. That is literally the one thing, So
okay. Well, interview's over.
You don't talk
That's
sources,
why I had you
methods,
on.
or operations. Those are the big three: sources, methods, and operations. So I could give you the general overview. I can give you my take on what I'm seeing. I can give you some broad strokes of my career, my background. But I will tell you, I've done the wars. I was one of General Flynn's guys. I served under him. I know General Flynn pretty well. We still keep in communication. It was very much an honor to be one of his guys, and I was very good at my job, very successful. I did war zone service. I did the national task force for high value targets, hunting them down globally. I did a lot of counterterrorism stuff. I did the Afghan war, the Iraq war, some other what I call sport wars or conflicts. I kind of refer to myself as a battlefield tourist because, as a case officer, you have a lot of autonomy to run either in the field with, soldiers, guys who are on the ground. You're embedded with your infantry outfit that's in the far outreaches of, the hinterlands, or you could be, wearing a suit and going to an embassy function. So there's a lot of leeway, and it really just becomes the kind of job where you just do whatever is appropriate for the mission for that time to accomplish whatever you want to. So you wear what you need to wear, you do what you need to do, and you go where you need to go. That's the general gist of it.
Well, I'm really grateful for the opportunity to get to talk to you, and I've got so many questions, and you touched on so many things that I think about regularly that I'd like to unpack. You indicated that you felt like our country took a wrong turn after 9/11, or I'm not sure how you characterized it, but that's when the train got wobbly. I'm a little older than you are, and my paradigm is that we really got off the track on November the 22nd, 1963. And I was home from the fourth grade with the flu. Mm-hmm. I woke up at 12:30 after having slept for like 15 hours. And I said to myself, I remember like it was yesterday, I said to myself, if you don't get out of bed, you're never going to get well. So I drug myself out of bed, put on some pants, went downstairs to where I knew my mom was going to watch as the world turns every day at 1 o'clock. And as I walked down, and our listeners are tired of hearing me say this because I've told this story numerous times, but I walked down the stairs and she said, "Oh, John, come sit next to me." And my mom was a very loving, nurturing person. So that wasn't an particularly unusual comment, but the tone of her voice foreboded that something was terribly wrong. I sat down next to her and I said, "Mom, is everything okay?" And she said, "No, John, the president has been shot." As a 10-year-old, I couldn't assimilate that. I could not comprehend what she was trying to tell me. And we sat in front of that black and white television for the next 4 days. I watched John peer under the flag looking for his dad. I still get a lump in my throat when I think about it. I saw him salute the casket as it went down Pennsylvania Avenue. I saw Jack Ruby shoot Lee Harvey Oswald. And I developed an unhealthy obsession that lay dormant until I got to college. And then a buddy of mine from Chicago, Jerry, came in and did a book review on A Rush to Judgment by Mark Lane. And I started to, for the first time, realize that there were more questions than answers about who killed Kennedy. I certainly don't want to offend you in any way or disparage the organization that you work for, but it is my firm conviction today that the CIA, led by Allen Dulles, killed John Kennedy. And I think that is a reprehensible crime that cannot be forgiven nor forgotten. And I believe that this country is in serious trouble, and it will not change until we have a cleansing and we acknowledge our bad deeds, get the truth out, hold the people accountable, even if it's in memoriam, and get this country back on the right track and on its foundational values, as you alluded to, of a Christian-based or religious-based orthodoxy that will provide a moral compass for us. It seems to me that those values have completely been lost. And I don't mean to preach or get on my soapbox, but give me a microphone. What do you expect is going to happen? But,
I agree with you. I do.
Well, and so I continually find myself weekly coming on here and being hypercritical of the organization that you used to work for. And I always hasten to add that there are legions of fine men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our country, who risk their life on a daily basis, go into harm's way in ways that we don't even have a clue what it might look like or what they may do. And I include you in that category. But my God, I think if it's going to change, it's got to change from within. I don't think little old me or even Donald Trump has the ability to really affect change. And it seems like there needs to be an uprising from the rank and file in the FBI and the CIA and the NSA and say no more. Our conduct is going to be governed by the federal code of the federal statutes and the code of regulations. And, I watch these guys go to Capitol Hill and they basically just sit there and flick everybody off. They don't answer the questions. And it's obvious that they may not lie, but they certainly skirt the truth and are not there appearing apparently in good faith. So let me give you a chance to respond.
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack there. So going back to Kennedy, I would agree with you. And I think it may have even started, I think it started before that. I think it started, since we're going to go ahead and just go there, it's World War II, the end of it, we're talking about Eisenhower, the warning against the rise of the military industrial state. At the end of World War II, we had the establishment of the new monetary world order, Bretton Woods, as it were. And then what's also, let's go back even further. The establishment of the Federal Reserve. So that's when it really started to go off the rails. So the income tax that never existed before, the income tax that was then imposed, the lack of uprising by my grandfather and his generation. And, fast forward to then, we have a couple of world wars. We never had a world war before the Federal Reserve. And then poof, within 3 years, we had one. And then we got a second one. So that was fun. And we got a Great Depression before. And we had, some ups and downs. But then we started a world of easy credit. And we closed the gold window in 1933 to where then in theory, we had the gold, but we wouldn't pay foreign central banks the debt that we owed in the gold. And so we ultimately cut them off. And then finally in 1970, I think it was one or two, Nixon closed the gold window for the American people, made it illegal to do anything, to own any kind of gold or silver. And, now here we are in modern day where you've got people that have been so dumbed down by this educational system that doesn't teach them anything about either civic duty, personal responsibility, accountability, truth, objective reality, morality. None. It doesn't teach them anything. And it doesn't even do a good job at the basic stuff, which it is supposed to teach, which is reading, writing, and arithmetic. But that's a long-winded way of saying, I think the train went off the tracks long ago by mankind's inherently greedy and dishonest heart. So we've seen that worldwide. We are now in a situation where you have, in essence, neutered the entire American population because you've got the majority of Americans that don't even understand the first thing about what our country was founded on, what the entire concept of America is, what Judeo-Christian, morality and ideology is, what the theology of anything that started something good. So we basically, it's like that third generation of billionaire, trust fund baby that has never had to work for anything in their life, and they get given it all, and they have no understanding of the value of money, and they just absolutely destroy their own fortune.
I'm shaking my head in violent agreement. I think you are so right. And I look back on my own parenting, and I've got 3 great sons. I love them to death. But, my wife and I, without ever discussing it, I know that we had a tacit agreement that we wanted their lives to be better than ours. And we had good lives. but we
Yeah.
worked. We worked and we were disciplined and we had to go to church. Somewhere along the line, the concept of sex, drugs, and rock and roll and not going to church on Sunday has really done great harm and injury to us as a people. And we have lost a lot of our moral compass, I believe. But this notion, and I had a great interview. I've thoroughly enjoyed the interview with Secretary Wilbur Ross a couple of months ago. And he said that we had created a generation of sensitive, hypersensitive people, and that it was the result of our having basically coddled them. And in my case, I plead guilty to trying to protect my children from the harshness and the meanness of the world. And I just think that that was not doing them a service in the long run, because the world can be a tough place. And I think the more you teach a child to stand on their own feet at an early age and defend themselves and take up for themselves, but that means allowing them to take some hard knocks, is a true life experience that we should not have deprived our children of. Am I making any sense at all?
You are. It's interesting because I have two young kids. My daughter is 9, my son is 6. And, we kind of talk about some of these things, and I've explained to them both, this may sound like strange parenting, but I've explained to them both that they are going to see a lot of tough things in their lifetime. And that it is my job as their father to prepare them for that. And, I make no apologies for that. That sometimes, things are not the way that you would like it. But my job as dad is to make sure that my kids understand the world, how it is, and not necessarily how they want it to be. And then if they do want to change it, then empower them and give them the tools and resources to do it. So it's not a hopeless thing. I just think that informing children about the reality of the world that they live in is critically important these days. And it certainly isn't being done by the government, the media, big pharma, big tech. None of that stuff you're not going to get the truth from them. And so, and if you look at to kind of underscore the point that we've really been hitting on, it's like, well, so the first one that spoke out about it was Eisenhower, and that was just kind of a warning, like, here it's coming. The next one to speak out about it was Kennedy, and they killed him for it.
Yep.
And then, not soon thereafter, MLK Jr. was assassinated. And why was he assassinated? Well, because I think he was speaking truth about the human rights movement and about the corrupt powers that be that were already in halls of power. And so then fast forward to Reagan. Reagan, is maybe not necessarily as in line as he needs to be. And then Hinckley is there to send him a little warning, and they get Reagan back in line. And then the next guy to speak out, wait a second, hold on. After Reagan, we had who?
Well, you left out Bobby Kennedy.
We had the former CIA director, George H.W. Bush, as president.
Yes.
Right after Reagan. And he served 4-year term, read my lips, no new taxes. He broke that vow, and he served as a one-term president because he died on the Hill to greenlight a new tax on the American people. And that's literally what turned. He went from a 90% approval rating after the Desert Storm Gulf War to like 17 or 20%, whatever it was, towards the end. But I think the lesson to be learned is anyone that speaks out and speaks truth, they shoot at. So we now have the President Trump, who, they try to get him out with indictments and Russia, and collusion this and obfuscation that. And, I think that all had the hand of intelligence services, probably both domestic and foreign. I do believe that there are a lot of enemies of America, both within and without, that would love to see this country fail. And not just from a spiritual standpoint, not just from an economic standpoint or a moral standpoint, but I think in order to understand the world as it exists right now, we have to fundamentally agree that the people who are in charge are not actually crazy. They may be stupid, they may be misguided, but they're not crazy. And so if you look at the things that have been, the policies that have been instituted, whether it's the Ukraine war, the coup in Ukraine in 2014, the obvious, illicit trafficking hub that it is, the global playground for, bioweapons, drugs, human trafficking, and Hunter Biden's business dealings. I mean, it's all a very, 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 very openly corrupt system at this point.
It's in your face. It's in your face corrupt.
They don't even hide it anymore.
No, they don't.
They don't even hide it anymore. So, they tried to kill President Trump. When they couldn't do that, 24 hours later, we got this weird cryptic text supposedly from Joe Biden saying, hey, I'm just going to bow out of the campaign, but I'm still totally the president. It's cool. And then they went from Kamala Harris, who couldn't even get 1% in the Democratic primary against her own political rivals trying to win the presidential primary. She couldn't get 1% in that, and now they're trying to gaslight us and tell us that she's beating Donald Trump in every poll. I mean, I'm sorry. At some point we have to say, we got to call it and say that we're done with the kids at the table now. It's time for the adults to step in and put some order back in this.
I realize that what I'm about to say could be horribly misunderstood. So let me finish the thought before anyone jumps to any conclusions. But no, I can't express it that way because somebody will clip a snippet of it and take it out of context. I guess the fact that there have been 2 attempts on President Trump's life gives me real hope that he is going to win the election. I say that only because they have tried everything else, and nothing else has been able to eliminate him politically. And so it is my belief that this is not the result of lone crazed gunmen, but rather some sort of an orchestrated, planned attempt on President Trump's life to eliminate him as a potential victor on November the 5th. That's what I truly believe.